When you're in winter's favorite town, the snow-covered mountains surround you. A historic Main Street charms you. And every day brings a new adventure. Welcome to Park City, Utah. Naturally, winter's favorite town. Join the experience at visitparkcity.com.
Hey, I'm Ryan Reynolds. At Mint Mobile, we like to do the opposite of what Big Wireless does. They charge you a lot, we charge you a little. So naturally, when they announced they'd be raising their prices due to inflation, we decided to deflate our prices due to not hating you. That's right. We're cutting the price of Mint Unlimited from $30 a month to just $15 a month. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 upfront payment equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes. See details.
Productivity, winning strategies, and aligning employer-employee goals. If this sounds like something your business could use more of, then you've come to the right place. The Business Mechanic Show with your host, Vaughn Sigmund. Let Vaughn show you how to develop, improve, and jumpstart your business. So now, please welcome the host of The Business Mechanic, Vaughn Sigmund.
Welcome to the Business Mechanic Show. I'm your host, Vaughn Sigmund, the co-founder of Results Driven Leadership. We provide the knowledge, skills, and tools you need to advance your career and business success. Whether you're just getting started or been running a business for years, we've got the advice and the tips that will help you stay ahead of the competition. All from real executives, not trained trainers who have learned something from a book. We've been there and we've done that. Let's get down to the nuts and the bolts of making your career and business more successful. So let's get started with today's show. Results-driven managers who want outstanding, not just good, not just average, not like it's always been, but outstanding results. Well, they meet with their employees to talk about long-term goals. They do this at least once a year. They also have quarterly meetings to discuss progress towards these goals. And the best way to do these meetings, as I've said previously in other shows, is to be able to also understand how to manage successful action plans. So back to the meeting part. I think, believe, and am experienced that if you have these goal planning meetings outside of work, you go rent a meeting room somewhere. It should be, it can't always be, I understand that, but it should be in a different location than you work, if that's possible. At the very least, you need to make sure there are no interruptions. And these meetings, typically, if you follow the 3 simple steps to annual planning, which again, I put a link to that full document, that entire module, the blueprint to getting this done. You can download it for free. It's in the show notes. It should take about 4 hours. Sometimes it's an all-day session, depending on how involved and talkative, if you got a team building, having some fun, but it should be about 4 hours of meeting time. And during that meeting, managers and their team, the owner and their managers, whatever the makeup is, they're going to talk about what is happening with the business, and most importantly, for the purposes of planning and improvement and being outstanding, what can be improved. You're going to set new business goals. But here's where often the mistake is made. You want to get your team's help doing this. And listen, back to the meeting room part. You don't have to spend a ton of money on this offsite. But it's got to be focused. It's got to be focused with no interruptions. That kills the deal. During this meeting, you need to focus on goals, the goals, that will have the biggest impact on the organization. How do you know that? Well, you go through the 3 steps that I've got in my 3 Simple Steps to Annual Planning guide. And I've covered it in 2 previous podcasts, 2 steps. So this has been a series of programs. And during this show, I'm going to share the 3rd step. Once again, back to the show notes. I put links to the 2 previous shows if you need to go find those. But your team meeting, this team meeting around setting goals, is really the oil that gets it done. It's what's going to help you achieve your company's goals. This group planning session is all about your team and how your team is going to drive the actions that's going to get the results. It's a key leadership dynamic. If you tell them versus you ask them. And you ask yourself, think about this yourself. Are you more likely to do something you're told to do? Or are you more likely to go work hard on something you want to do that you've had some say in? That's a rhetorical question. You know which one it is. So let's talk about the annual goal setting meeting. This is a common mistake I see many managers make as they start making goals, and that's what this is all about, making goals without the help of their people, the people who actually have to go do the work. And that, my friends, is not a good idea. Because when you work with your team and they help you decide the goals, not only the goals, but the actions, the critical success factors, they've been through the SWOT exercise, so they know your strengths, your weaknesses, your opportunities, and your threats. You are much more likely to reach those goals. Why is this? Because the people you are talking with have a say in the action plan, being told versus wanting to. So they probably will agree with the activities, depending on how you facilitate this. If you're a command and control manager or leader, you're going to have a tough time making this work to your benefit, the highest possible level. But if you're collaborative, you're willing to listen, maybe hear things that you're not really interested in hearing or is uncomfortable for you to hear, it's going to make it tougher. You need to be vulnerable during the course of this. Because when they help you make the action plans, 2 good things happen. 1, you don't have to be the smartest person in the room. It takes the pressure off of you to have to come up with everything. And then secondly, it's going to end up being their plan, not your plan. So if you want to do it that way, you want to do it the way that I know works. Done it for decades. I've worked with dozens and dozens of companies. In fact, I had 3 last week. It is annual planning season. This works, and it's amazing. So you got to follow these 3 steps. And again, I put the link in the show notes so you can download a free version of the 3 Simple Steps to Annual Goal Setting. Download it. You'll have everything you need to have a lively, fun, successful goal setting session that will involve your team and make stuff happen. And that's no matter whether you're a business owner or you're just managing a team. So in going back, just as a reminder, the 3 steps to setting your goals are: 1, you've got to do a SWOT diagnostic. Again, all the steps, the questions, the statements, everything you need is in the guide. SWOT is an acronym for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And the fact that I did 3 of these this past week is very fresh in my mind. The team freaking loves doing this. They get so involved. There's such great dialogue that takes place. And again, I watched one president of a company this week get a little uncomfortable, want to defend it or explain things away because he didn't like what he was hearing. You can't do that. I had to kind of take him by the shoulder and say, dude, stop. Because it's just the facts, and you've got to accept that. The second step is once you've gone through SWOT, is you, based on the information you got from that, what your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, you're going to identify your critical success factors. And just follow the guidelines. I'm oversimplifying it right now. You're not going to learn how to do it from just this one podcast. You got to listen to 3 and download the guide. You're going to identify your critical success factors, and then you're going to take that. This is the perfect recipe. You're going to move to the third step, which is to create your strategic goals and actions to utilize your organization's strengths, neutralize any weaknesses, take advantage of all the opportunities are identified, and then be prepared for any threats that are outside of your control. Bingo, bango, here we go. So again, I've covered in the 2 previous podcasts. So it's the first one's named SWOT Analysis for Beginners. The second one is Secret to Great Leadership, which it is. Creating critical success factors. Those are sometimes referred to as objectives. I call them critical success factors. That's how I was taught. And again, just use the link, download the damn thing, and you will be glad. If you want to plan and hit your goals and be super successful this year. And today, I'm going to share with you how to achieve more this year with the goal setting tips I'm going to give you today. Many organizations that are not doing very well, they do not take the time to figure out the most important goals, and much less how to go achieve them. They often create goals and start taking action without thinking things through. Do not make this mistake. I've been there and I've done that, and I've got the bruises to show for that. I made that mistake for a very long time until I learned better. And then once I learned, it was like, oh, that was a real game changer for me. So take your time. This is not a rush. Take your time and plan things out to be successful. Now, let me get a little deeper into the goal setting step. Once you finish SWOT and figured out your critical success factors, you're going to start figuring out your goals. The first goal you should focus on is the most important critical success factors. When you're going through that exercise, as I've designed it for you, you're going to prioritize them. So start with the number one priority through the process that I shared with you in the guide and in previous podcasts. You get that from your SWOTs, etc. Now, and before I go too much further, I'm going to go off on a tangent. It's my show. I can do it. Stick with me on this because I think you will pick up some valuable information and maybe change your mind on a few things. So I'm going to go off on my tangent. Every single struggling company or struggling team I've ever come across has some things in common, but for sure they have this one thing in common. The head of the company or the manager of the team has not established clear goals. Other than what may be in their head, nobody knows what we're shooting for, much less talks about it much. They've never really thought about, never considered involving their team members in establishing and creating goals and putting them in writing. And that's the part I want to underline is get it in writing. Once it gets out of your head, it gets churned up into the pool of collective knowledge. It gets prioritized and you start putting it in writing. There's a lot of good things that happen. Let me share some interesting information on how important it is to have it get put into writing, and along with regular follow-ups to determine how things are progressing. There has been a significant body of research that clearly shows that putting goals in writing can and does improve the likelihood of reaching them. Here's why. Writing down a goal makes it more concrete. It's more tangible, which in turn helps increase motivation and focus. Additionally, when goals are written down, it's easier to track. Easier to track the progress and to hold oneself or hold the team accountable for achieving them. And these studies have shown that people and companies who write down their goals are more likely to achieve them than those who simply think about them. You get that sense of commitment. Things are more salient when they're in writing. In a study, I'll refer to this study, in a study that was published in the Psychology Science magazine, participants who wrote down their goals were 42% more likely to achieve them than those who simply thought about their goals. Writing down goals helps you clarify. It's amazing once it comes out of your head and goes on to paper, how all of a sudden you see this goal so differently and you can edit it and refine it. But as long as it's tumbling around in that big brain of yours, you don't get that opportunity. And once it gets in writing and you start dialing it in and see how achievable it is, that helps the motivation and focus. So another study from Dr. Gail Matthews, and her study clearly showed that people who wrote down their goals were 61% more likely to achieve those written goals. So somewhere between 42 and 61%, depending on the situation. Those are pretty good odds. You're going to improve your odds of achieving your goal if you simply just put them in writing. Take those odds to Vegas and tell me you wouldn't. Of course you would. And let's talk about the percentage of people and companies who actually achieve their goals. Are you feeling like sometimes everyone has big plans for their future and you don't? How are these other companies or teams or people hitting all these high marks, growing their company, growing their teams, being successful, and you're not? Well, I promise you, those people are setting goals, and they're communicating those goals, and they're tracking those goals, and they're putting them in writing. But companies are people who don't, whether it's a personal goal or a company goal or a team goal, people who don't set goals, well, they don't stick with them, so they don't achieve them. It becomes a little bit of a sprint. Then the distractions in life come along, other priorities get in place, and off you go. Off you go. In fact, according to Reliable Plan, only 20% of people and companies set goals for themselves. 20%, meaning that 80% don't have any goals other than what's maybe in their head. And when you do all that math and you boil it right down, that means that only 6% of people and companies successfully achieve their goals. So if you're not sold on setting goals, writing them down, think about the fact that you are 10 times more likely to succeed, 10x, if you have goals and you put them in writing, you communicate them, you hold people accountable to them. And get this, fewer than 3% of Americans write down their goals. You know, there is a whole industry out there of self-improvement, and every single one of them will tell you, write down your goal. And even fewer, this is amazing, 1% work on their goals every day. 1% work on their goals every day. They don't review them. They don't rewrite them. That's a part of the training that I share is it's okay to reestablish yourself and go in a different direction. You know, Brian Tracy shares that quite eloquently in some of his material. And note that taking the extra action of just sharing your goals with your team or employees dramatically increases the number that are successful. Sharing your goals with your team is not optional. Not if you plan to achieve them. And you have to have a detailed plan. So in study after study, the groups that are most successful, companies that were most successful, teams that established the highest achievements, they all had one thing in common. They wrote them and they published them. They shared them and they gave weekly progress to their team. Those people achieved 76% of their goals. I see so many people have goals. They're a little shy for some reason about sharing them. They certainly are not communicating them on a regular basis. They want to only get the data and share it quarterly because they don't think anybody cares. Well, they won't care if you don't share it with them, I promise you. Setting specific and challenging goals. And study after study shows that you're going to get somewhere close to 80% better results. 80%. And this isn't surprising because it is hard to take actions on goals if you're not asking yourself or your team to achieve them. It's so easy to forget about goals you set unless you're discussing them regularly. So, in conclusion of my tangent, thanks for sticking with me this long, but I'm trying to motivate you. If you've not picked up on my opinion so far, it's easier to achieve your goals if you have them written down. This way, you can review them and make sure you are still working on them. What gets talked about gets improved. It's an old saying, but it is 100% true. What gets talked about gets improved. And if you're not talking about it, leaving it up to the universe, folks. Now, I'm off my tangent. We're back to setting goals. First piece of advice is limit the number of goals. It's a mistake that many companies, people often make is choosing too many goals, trying to overtake the world. Because if there's too many goals, you're creating a degree of difficulty of achieving any of them. It just creates confusion. Don't do that. Don't confuse your team. Don't confuse yourself. You can't keep up with that many things. So make sure you don't have too many goals. Don't spread yourself or your resources too thin or the focus too thin. The capacity of your people. You know the resources you have available to you. Measure that in the number of goals. Measure that in the number of goals you establish. And remember that each goal set for your team or organization will need its own plan. The plan to achieve that goal. And working on more than one goal at a time is hard, especially if you haven't practiced this. If you're new to this, start with one. get better at it, go to 2. You know, some companies, really expert companies, can handle 5, but 5 is the max. So it's better to start with 1 or 2 until you get really adept at this. Stay focused. Keep your organization and team focused on the goals so that you get the benefit of achieving them. Second, very important thing is your goals must be SMART. The acronym for specific, measurable, achievable, the person responsible, and with clear timelines. Each goal you create needs to be very specific. I'm going to give you a little more detail on this in a sec, so you know when it's done. And it must be something that has a measurement to it. This cannot be subjective. It has to be objective. It has to be measurable. It can't be felt. And the goal should be something that is realistic and achievable. Don't bite off more than you can chew. You want wins out of this, folks. And there needs to be someone responsible. You need a captain, a chair, somebody that is leading the efforts to achieve this goal. And the person you hold accountable to complete it on time, or to communicate back to you what's going on if it's not being achieved, or if it can't be achieved on time. You're not holding the whole team accountable. You're holding this one person who then holds the team accountable. And that is a great developmental opportunity. If you've got somebody you're trying to develop to move to the next level, my friends, y'all, this is the way to do it. Put them in charge of a goal. And then finally, there must be clear timelines for when the goal should be or must be completed. So let me dig into a little more detail. Specific. It's all-encompassing and super important that your goals be specific. So write them down. And let me give you an example of a specific goal. So let's say you want to increase sales. That's a common one. So you should set a goal to increase sales by a certain percentage within a certain amount of time frame. So in this case, the goal is to increase sales by 25% within 3 years. And how are you going to do that? You're going to do that by exporting products to 6 different countries. Let me do that again. You want to increase sales. It's got to be specific, measurable, achievable, a person responsible. And it's got to have a timeline. So you're going to increase sales. The sales team is going to increase sales by 25% within 3 years by exporting products to 6 different countries. That goal is specific in how to achieve sales. Measurable. Got to be measurable. These are your KPI type things, or your measurable kind of things. Goals need to be able to be measured so you can track how the goal is working. It's usually tied back to your CSF, critical success factor. And let's say your CSF was reducing production cost, and meaning that the organization wants to spend less money on making products or providing services. So the top management team talked about all this and how much they need to reduce cost in order to be more competitive. So they decided they wanted to reduce the average manufacturing cost per part by 20% within 2 years. So here are some examples of some questions that might help you create the needed measurements. What is the current asset to liability ratio, or debt to equity ratio needed to satisfy your bank loans. That's a big one. What annual revenue do you need to meet to achieve a specific ranking in your industry, if that's important to you? What does your organization need in measurably improved rates of repeat sales or retention of customers? How much would you like to improve the number of employees retained, or reduce turnover, or reduce training cost? What is the needed rate or percentage of sales increase of your products and services for the next 3 years? Those are all measurables. What's achievable? Goals should be something that you can actually do. Because if employees think a goal is not achievable, they might start to feel bad and just give up early on. They're going to feel defeated. You're going to be dead at the starting line. Having goals that are not possible to achieve, and this is why you want to get your folks involved in this, as many and as deep down as you can, that will absolutely lead to failure. They will lose respect for you. Any goal that you set going forward will be questioned. So be careful about doing that. Don't have BS goals. And especially don't set a goal that will require your team to be good at something they're not. The goal may be getting your team better so that you can achieve that goal later. You may need to work on that thing that your team's not good at. Because if you ever want to achieve that goal, you're not going to be successful. You can't build the plane while it's flying. So let me give you an idea of what we're talking about here. This is an IT department. And they were thinking about how they could help their clients in a broader range of areas. And the person in charge of IT said that the people who work for her don't have enough technical training to make real improvements. They don't have the training to expand the offering. And they found that during their SWOT exercise. So the IT director's boss included a strategy for increasing the technological capabilities of their team, and gave financial incentives to every IT employee who passed a specific technology course. So she worked on their certifications, paid for those certifications, and then once her team was more technically educated, then they could start expanding their offerings to their clients. And one of the things that always comes up, because I've seen a lot of companies do something like that. In order to pay for the course or the certification, they've got to get a score of at least 80%. Or 50 or 75%. They got to pass the course in order to get paid back for the course. So just an aside. The person responsible. I always like to think about this part of the goal setting and achievement is who's going to do what by when. So the person responsible for achieving the SMART goal is the one who's going to be accountable for making sure the goal is completed within the set time frame. And this person needs to be empowered, authorized to do what is necessary and make the decisions to help achieve that goal. This person responsible for a SMART goal, they may work alone. They may be a committee of one, or they may work with a small team or a larger team. Depends on the goal. What makes sense? You don't have to have multiple people on everything. But this person responsible for the SMART goal must have the skills, the knowledge, the resources, the empowerment, the approval authority needed to complete the goal successfully. And then the T of SMART is timelines. Your goals should be things that you can achieve in a certain amount of time. Now, there's a little bit of rule of thumb on this. Don't set any goals, really long-term goals that can't be achieved in 3 years. 3 years is the max. You usually want to get it done in a year. Sometimes it's in a quarter. But keep it, shorter goals, less than 12 months, are better, my opinion. But sometimes they're going to take longer. But I can tell you, those usually don't work out because most teams or people or companies don't have the sustainment power to stick with it that long. What you might want to do is take a big goal and turn it into multiple smaller goals. So you do it like building blocks to get to where you want to get. Now, this is something, I want to make another point here. The importance of timelines. Timelines ties back to Parkinson's law. Parkinson's law. That is the theory or the business saying that work will expand to fill the time that is available. This means that if you have too much time to do something, that something's going to take a long time. So many managers, so many business owners get so frustrated because they've assigned something to someone. They go back and check on it in the timeline that they've got in their head, but not communicated, and it's not done. Because they didn't tell the person that they assigned it to what time they wanted it done or what day they wanted it done. I've said this next saying a ton of times. People often get mad at other people because they didn't do something they didn't tell them to do. Think about that. They get mad at someone because they didn't do something that they didn't tell them what to do. This is, you got to tell them what by when. So will you get this report done for me? Yeah. Can you get it done today? Yeah. Okay. Well, if you go at 3 o'clock, that's not the end of the day. But if you say, can you get this report done for me? Yes. I need it by 1 o'clock. Is there any problem getting it done by 1 o'clock? No, I'll get it done by 1 o'clock. Is there anything else that's going to get in your way of getting it done by 1 o'clock? Because I've got to go to a meeting with the boss and the board of directors to present this report right after that. Can you have it done by 1 o'clock? Don't be too casual in your assignments. And managers also get very frustrated that people are just standing around. Their team members maybe just stand around or, kibitzing during the course of the day. Let me tell you, the reason why the old saying, idle hands are the devil's workshop, is because if you keep your team busy, you give them more work than they can handle, guess what? They're going to learn to get their work done more quickly. But if you never stretch them to get it done in a certain amount of time, if you don't pile enough on their plates and keep them busy, they're going to get bored. They're going to start gossiping. Anybody that has a gossiping problem also has a communication problem with delivering the needed information around timelines. You got to keep your people busy because busy people are happy people. Happy people don't gossip. They don't stir up the crap in your business. They don't cause problems because they're too busy to do that. Give them timelines. So Parkinson's law, in essence, just means that the job will take as much time as you give it. And this often, and if you don't give it, okay, you're leaving it up to somebody else to decide, is that really what you want to do? And this often leads to your goals. They led to my goals back before I knew better, not being met. So it's important, it's essential, it's critical to set a deadline for when you want the different steps of this goal to be achieved, or you'll be disappointed. When you're trying to reach a goal, sometimes it's important to have smaller goals to get there first. So let me give you another example of that. Your goal could be to increase sales by 30% in 3 years. In fact, I did this with one team last week. You can measure the achievement, the 30% increase, on a 10-year or a 1-year 10% improvement. So the first year, you're going to get 10% improvement. Second year, you're going to get 20% improvement. And so in the second, going into the third year, you're at your 30%. And that's all measurable, and you can see it happening. So establish timelines, make sure they're achievable timelines, make sure you got a person responsible for these timelines, and make sure it's all easy to understand. Be very specific about it. You'll be doing yourself a favor. So tying back to the previous part of the 3 simple steps to a goal plan or goals is you're going, during your SWOT exercise, you're going to identify strengths, weaknesses, opportunities. Strengths and opportunities are 2 great ways to establish some goals. Weaknesses, great way to establish goals. So let's talk about some opportunities and weaknesses, all right? So let's talk about a weakness in a company as an example. Lack of diversified product line, or a company has a limited online presence. So the goal from those 2 weaknesses might be develop and launch 3 new products within the next year to diversify our product line, or to increase our online sales by 30% in the next quarter by improving our website or expanding our social media presence. Make sense? Maybe an opportunity, let's go to opportunities now, could be that you say, hey, wow, we could do this. We could grow demand. There's an eco-friendly thing happening out there, if you haven't heard. We could grow demand for our eco-friendly products. Let's come up with an eco-friendly product line. Or you realize during your SWOT exercise that there's new markets that we're not going into. We ought to go tap into one of those markets. So some goals around those might be to develop a line of eco-friendly products to meet the growing demand in the market within the next 18 months. Or to enter a new market by doing some market research, identifying the key players, and within those key players, the potential customers or contacts, and create a sales and marketing plan within the next 6 months. It all doesn't have to come at once, in other words. Here's a goal that was developed to overcome a weakness. Let's talk about the goal now. Sometimes people set goals to overcome these weaknesses. Often they do. So for example, if an organization's sales depend too much on only a few major accounts, very dangerous, they may set a goal to fix that. There could be a significant potential negative impact if one or just a couple of these companies stop being accounts. I've seen it happen. I was put out of a job once because of that years ago. So you got to be careful. So the weakness is depending too much on one customer or a small number of customers. So the critical success factor would be decreasing our dependence on a small number of customers that represent most of the company's sales. Pareto's law, 80-20, you got to be careful about that when it comes to the broadness of your customer base. So the organization's goal is to expand our customer base within 2 years so that no one customer represents over 20% of the company's projected sales. Simple enough. How about a goal developed around a threat? Like increased competition in the market or a big economic downturn. So the goals could sound something like conduct a market analysis to identify our top competitors and develop a plan to differentiate our products and services within the next quarter, or a unique value prop. If we got competitors come along, how are we going to stand out? Are we just going to be Circuit City and let Best Buy take us over? Here's another one. Develop a cost-saving strategy to mitigate the impact of an economic downturn within the next 6 months. So cost savings, waste reductions, you don't want to be talking about cutting cost. Cost-saving strategy, that sounds a whole lot better to your people. Waste reduction, where are we wasting money? And how can we identify and eliminate that waste? Here's another threat. Diversify revenue streams by identifying and targeting new markets for the company's products and services within the next year. Maybe to hang on to our customers, we improve customer service and after-sales support to retain existing customers and attract new ones through referrals. So I think you're getting it. Again, it's all in the guide. Now let's talk about something else, high-risk goals. High-risk goals. Don't create a goal that is too risky. Some of you high D's on the DISC scale, you are very risk tolerant. Be careful with that, because not everybody on your team is going to buy into what they see as risky. So watch that. Some managers, some business leaders who have been very successful, by the way, they sometimes create these goals that are just in the eyes of the people who have to go get it done, just too risky. Just make sure if you're going to do it, and it's your right to do it, that taking that risk and the potential negative outcome to that risk is worth it. Just be careful with it. So let's conclude this thing. This isn't the most lively of things to do, but it's the most critical thing to do. And I got to tell you, as you get into it and you get better and better at facilitating, these meetings can be a ton of fun. They can be exhausting, but they're a ton of fun. And wrapping things up, many organizations, they don't achieve success because they do not have clear goals. And that's going to result in organizations not being able to weather major challenges, to be honest with themselves, to be vulnerable, and accept that they've got stuff they need to do, that they're not good at everything. Embrace the elephant. Don't avoid your problems. Create goals. They can be innovative, but they must be well thought out. And they should be challenging. But it's going to be worth it. It takes time to create and implement reasonable goals. So be patient with it, especially your first time. It takes time to implement reasonable goals. But the better you and your team get at it, the more likely you are to start achieving the future you want. You and your team, they need to be focused and have a plan. What gets talked about gets improved, communicated. Embrace the obstacles. Be prepared for those. Be patient. You already work hard enough. Let's work smarter. And then you can overcome whatever you need to and be more successful than you've ever dreamed. There will be some difficult parts. There's going to be some detours while you're trying to achieve these goals, but you can overcome these if you and your employees are really committed to achieving goals that have a good chance of success. Well, that's a wrap on another episode of the Business Mechanic Show. If today's content resonates with you, then you're going to love what we have to offer. For those of you who are ready to take your business or personal career to the next level, we have an array of training and coaching services tailored just for you. From performance coaching designed to enhance your potential, to executive coaching that guides leaders to steer their ships towards greater success. Are you in sales management or looking to fortify your leadership acumen? Dive into our sales management training and coaching. Not only will it sharpen your strategies, but it will also provide you an ROI that's undeniable. Remember, the best investment you can make is in yourself and your team. For those seeking flexible learning options, we're excited to share our online and in-person management leadership classes. These aren't just your typical courses. They are meticulously crafted, ensuring that they align with your unique needs and aspirations. And the best part, prices start at just $47 per month, making top-tier coaching and training accessible for everyone. Your growth, both personally and professionally, can have a ripple effect, the one I call the transformational triangle of change. The skills you learn, the perspectives you gain, and the efficiencies you create can translate into increased revenues, more cohesive teams, and an enriched company culture. So why wait? The potential ROI on this investment isn't just in dollars, it's in the progressive future you're carving out for yourself and your organization. Thanks once again for tuning in. And remember, every business needs a tune-up every now and then. Let the Business Mechanic Show be your guide. Check out our website, rdltraining.com, to discover more details on our programs and coaches. We have a link in the show notes to guide you there. Until next time, we're out of here.
Ryan Reynolds here for, I guess, my 100th Mint commercial. No, don't. I mean, honestly, when I started this, I thought I only have to do like 4 of these. I mean, it's unlimited premium wireless for $15 a month. How are there still people paying 2 or 3 times that much? I'm sorry, I shouldn't be victim blaming here. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch. Whenever you're ready.
$45 upfront payment equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes. See details.
Hey, I'm Ryan Reynolds. Recently, I asked Mint Mobile's legal team if big wireless companies are allowed to raise prices due to inflation. They said yes. And then when I asked if raising prices technically violates those onerous 2-year contracts, they said, "What the f*** are you talking about, you insane Hollywood ass?" So to recap, we're cutting the price of Mint Unlimited from $30 a month to just $15 a month. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 upfront payment equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes. See details.